All right, so at this point, you should be somewhere around hours 3 to 4. So basically, you're just kind of in the middle of coding right now. So just to go over this again, it says keep working, check in after hour 4 once again on whether you are on track to complete your responses. You should ideally know the abstraction you will write about and the algorithm that that you'll write about. So one thing that I just wanted to point out with these, because to be honest, I wasn't really sure myself, so I did a little bit of investigating for us. And so when we're looking at these terms, abstractions and algorithms, earlier in this sheet, they had us look at a couple of examples of both. Okay, so just remember that abstraction is just a way that you're solving a problem, basically. Okay, and then an algorithm is going to be a sequenced, like sequence code that also solves a problem. To me, some of these terms can overlap quite a bit, so that's why I always get, I don't know. To me, they mean more or less the same thing. You would use an algorithm as an abstraction and vice versa. Just looking at these practice that we did earlier. So they have an example of an algorithm here, and we looked at what qualifies. So these were based off of rows 4 and 5 when you're grading. So you can read through these written responses again, but basically what we're looking for is that your first selection must have at least one parameter, and a parameter has an effect on the functionality of the procedure. So remember, when they say procedure, we think function, okay? But if we look at the requirements for row 5, you're going to notice that they're pretty much the same. Okay, so it says sequencing, selection, and iteration. So if we think of that, what that means again, we're basically looking for an if and a for loop within our function, and then it has to include parameters. So you could use separate ones for this, but I was interested in is, can you use the same function for both of those answers? And the answer is yes, you can. So if we look at even some of the examples they had down here, we were looking for if it had parameters, if it had a for statement, and if it had an if statement. So this one is missing the if statement, right? If we look at this one, we have parameter, we have an if, but we don't have a loop. Okay. If we look at number 3, we have parameters, we have a for loop, and no if statement. Okay. And then finally, we do have all those things. Okay. So we have our for loop and if statement and parameters. So that one would qualify. And we would be able to use that for both those sections. So if we look at the annotated example, so underneath lesson 1 for unit 8, we have these annotated examples. So remember, I would look at these as you're working. They're going to help you out a lot. And I have open this annotated sample 1. So if I look at this example, because like I said, I wasn't sure if you could use the same function twice, but I looked in this annotated example and they do. Okay, so I can't let me try here. There we go. So we can see that they talked about their list that they created, and they showed the function that uses that list. Okay. And then you talk about that basically for the first one. Then for the second, row 5, they use the same one. Okay. So it's okay to do that. I wasn't really sure, but I looked it up and looked into it, and you can do that. So really, if you make sure that your function has that parameter and the for and if statements with parameters, you should be good. Okay. We also have, if we look down a little bit further, they have the checklist for you. So if we go down a little bit further, and you also have this too, so don't forget about this. This might help you as well. But if we go down a little bit further, they have the checklist for the written responses. So when you get to those points, it might help you to look back at these too, but I'll make additional videos. So hopefully that's enough to, if you're around like hours 3 and 4 right now, I think you're in a pretty good spot. So just make sure that you're checking in if you want to. I'll probably reach out to you guys a little bit later this week to see how things are going. But if you want to Zoom and talk about things, let me know. Or if you just would prefer to send a message in Schoology, that would work as well. All right, let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.